Moscow, Soviet Union, the summer of 1942. The war has turned against the Red Army. Entire divisions have been erased. Cities have fallen. The Wehrmacht is pushing deep into Soviet territory, and every kilometer is paid for in blood. Tanks are desperately needed at the front, but the front keeps moving faster than the tanks can reach it. Somewhere inside a design bureau, an idea takes shape. Not a better tank, not a faster tank, a flying one. The concept is as audacious as it is absurd. Take a light tank, strip it down to the bare minimum, attach massive wooden wings and a tail, tow it behind a bomber, release it over the battlefield, let it glide down behind enemy lines, cut the wings away, and fight. This machine has a name, Antonov A-40. On paper, it solves a real problem. Soviet airborne troops are brave but lightly armed. Paratroopers land with rifles and grenades, facing German armor and artillery. If a tank could land with them, intact, combat-ready, it could change everything. The A-40 is built around a T-60 light tank, already underpowered even by 1942 standards. Every kilogram matters. Ammunition is removed. Fuel is minimized. Armor is shaved down wherever possible. The wings are enormous, fragile, and temporary. They are never meant to return. The pilot is also the driver. Inside the tank, visibility is almost non-existent. Controls are crude. There is no second chance. If the glide fails, there is no parachute, no bailout. The tank does not forgive mistakes. Still, the project moves forward. Because in 1942, the Soviet Union does not have the luxury of rejecting desperate ideas. It only has the luxury of trying them. The problem with a flying tank is not imagination, it is weight. A tank is designed to survive impact, not avoid it. Every plate of armor exists for a reason. Every rivet, every bracket, every bolt adds mass. Remove too much, and the tank stops being a tank. Remove too little, and it will never leave the ground. The designers understood this immediately. The base vehicle chosen for the experiment was the T-60, one of the lightest tanks in Soviet service. Even so, it was barely suitable. Its engine was weak, its armor thin, its armament modest. In combat, it was already struggling. As a glider, it was worse. To make the concept viable, sacrifices were required. Ammunition was removed almost entirely. Fuel was reduced to the absolute minimum. Non-essential equipment disappeared. Even the armor was trimmed wherever possible, shaving millimeters that could mean the difference between flight and failure. What remained was still heavy. The wings had to be enormous, far larger than those of most aircraft in service. Built from wood to save weight, they were structurally fragile and aerodynamically crude. The tail assembly, equally oversized, was bolted on temporarily. Nothing about the aircraft portion of the machine was elegant. It was functional in the most desperate sense of the word. The towing aircraft faced its own nightmare. To lift the tank into the air, a heavy bomber was required. Even then, the strain was extreme. Engines overheated, airspeed dropped, fuel consumption spiked dangerously. The margin for error was almost non-existent. If the tow plane failed, both machines would crash. If the release came too early, the tank would stall and fall. Too late, and the aircraft might not survive. And inside the tank sat a single man. He would not only drive the tank after landing, he would fly it. No training manuals existed for this role. No precedent, no rescue plan. The flying tank was not a refinement of warfare. It was a gamble born of necessity, carried by physics and paid for in risk. There would be no series of test flights. There would be no gradual refinement, no margin for learning from failure. The Soviet Union was fighting for survival, and the flying tank would get exactly one chance to prove itself. The test took place in the autumn of 1942. A TB-3 bomber was selected as the tow aircraft. Obsolete, underpowered, but available. The modified T-60 tank, stripped and fitted with its massive wooden wings and tail, was attached behind it. Cables were secured, instruments were checked. There was no ceremony. Inside the tank sat the test pilot. He could barely see outside. Communication with the tow plane was limited. Once airborne, he would have almost no control over his altitude. He could not climb. He could only glide and hope. The bomber accelerated down the runway. Slowly, painfully, it lifted off the ground. The added drag was immediate. Engines strained. Speed dropped. Fuel burned faster than anticipated. The aircraft climbed, but only barely. Every meter gained came at a cost. The flight lasted minutes. It became clear almost immediately that the plan was failing. The bomber was overheating. It could not maintain speed. The risk of losing both aircraft was growing by the second. The order was given. The tank was released. For a brief moment, the impossible happened. A tank flew. The A-40 glided away from the tow plane, descending toward the ground under its own lift. The pilot fought the controls, correcting its course, managing the descent. Against expectations, the landing worked. The tank touched down intact. The wings were jettisoned. And then reality returned. The tank drove away under its own power, proving that it could survive the landing, but not the concept. The tow aircraft barely made it back to base. The experiment had nearly ended in disaster. The conclusion was unavoidable. The flying tank could land, but it could not be delivered. After the test flight, there was no official cancellation ceremony, no public announcement, no dramatic rejection. The project simply stopped. On paper, the A-40 had succeeded in its narrowest objective. The tank had flown, it had landed, it had driven away under its own power. Technically, the concept worked. Strategically, it was useless. The Red Army did not lack bravery, it lacked time, fuel, trained crews, and aircraft. Every heavy bomber was desperately needed for transport, resupply, or conventional missions. Sacrificing one to tow a single light tank made no sense in a war measured by kilometers gained and divisions lost. Airborne doctrine also shifted. Early in the war, Soviet planners had dreamed of massive airborne operations, entire units landing behind enemy lines to disrupt supply routes and seize objectives. By 1942, those dreams had collapsed. German air superiority, better coordination, and brutal counterattacks turned airborne drops into near-suicidal gambles. A flying tank could not fix that. Even if delivered successfully, a lone T-60 behind enemy lines would face overwhelming odds. Thin armor, weak firepower, no infantry support, no logistics, no extraction. It would fight until it ran out of fuel or ammunition, or until it was destroyed. The engineers knew this. The generals knew it too. Worse still, the experiment exposed an uncomfortable truth. The Soviet Union did not need clever solutions. It needed simple ones that could be produced in enormous numbers. The war would not be won by miracles. It would be won by factories, railroads, and relentless attrition. So the flying tank was quietly shelved. Resources were redirected. Design bureaus moved on. The men involved returned to projects that could actually influence the battlefield. The A-40 became a footnote almost immediately. There was no second flight, no improved prototype, no revised doctrine. The tank that had briefly flown was grounded forever, not by failure, but by irrelevance. The A-40 was not a mistake. It was a symptom. By 1942, the Soviet Union was fighting a war of survival, not optimization. Losses were catastrophic. Equipment was scarce. Time was measured not in years or months, but in weeks. In that environment, innovation did not come from abundance. It came from desperation. History often treats wartime inventions as clever or eccentric, but most are born from fear. Fear of being outmatched, fear of arriving too late, fear that conventional solutions will no longer be enough. The flying tank belongs firmly in that category. It was not designed because it was efficient. It was designed because no one could afford to wait for something better. There was no time to build specialized gliders, no time to train new crews, no time to refine doctrine. The war demanded immediate answers, even if those answers were fragile. In that sense, the A-40 reveals something essential about how wars are actually fought. They are not won by brilliant ideas alone. They are won by ideas that fit the moment. The Soviet victory would eventually come through mass production, logistical endurance, and overwhelming numbers. Thousands of conventional tanks produced quickly and used ruthlessly proved more decisive than any single experimental breakthrough. The A-40 could never compete with that logic. It required rare aircraft, specialized preparation, and ideal conditions. Everything the Eastern Front did not offer. It was a solution for a war that no longer existed. Imagine too late to matter.